What's up everyone, it's Endymion, and there's been a massive bombshell that's coming out of Disney right now that could change the face of pop culture, and that's not hyperbole. As you're likely aware, Disney is in dire straits when it comes to the financial viability of the media empire, with projects failing in domino-like effects that are costing the House of Mouse billions in lost revenue over the past couple of years. From ruining the MCU to killing Star Wars, the cultural devastation Disney's top executives have done to these brands and many others is nothing short of biblical. And it seems that not only is Disney in the worst state they've been in decades, they may even be forced to sell off key intellectual properties they own in order to survive. And one of these properties being discussed behind closed doors of being sold is none other than Star Wars itself. This is crazy, so let's get started. The source for this wild story is Cameron Pasha, a Hollywood scriptwriter who's publicly stated what's been going on behind the scenes at Disney. Cameron has a Disney insider source codenamed Sparrow that's been accurately leaking almost every breaking news story surrounding Disney for the last year or so. Cameron Pasha has also met this Sparrow person and can confirm they do indeed work with the top executives at Disney. My best guess is that this Sparrow is likely a key investor at Disney who's sick of the downfall of the company, or a pissed off employee who knows if they don't speak out somehow, nothing will change. To bring you up to speed with the why and how this Star Wars deal could happen, we have to look at one of the biggest problems currently plaguing Disney, with that being the bidding war over the future of the Hulu platform. Currently, Disney has a majority stake in the control of Hulu, with Comcast having a minority hold at the current moment. Disney Plus is bleeding money and has also lost over 4 million subscribers in the last quarter, meaning Disney is at a crossroads where they need to bolster Disney Plus as soon as possible with new content, or the entire thing could go under. This is why recently Disney has been vaulting shows from the service like Willow. It's all being done to cut costs in order to save Disney in the long run. Anyway, Disney wants full control of Hulu because if they're able to achieve that, they can merge Hulu with Disney Plus and create a stronger streaming model. Comcast, however, values their control over Hulu at a far higher amount than Disney is willing to pay, and it's causing all kinds of problems. Disney values Comcast's share of Hulu at $8.7 billion. While Comcast won't budge and is asking for around $27.5 billion to part with Hulu. And as you can imagine, for Disney, whose revenue is in the dumps right now, paying $27 billion for Hulu is not exactly realistic with their current bank account. Because of both companies not willing to budge, it's entered arbitration, which is basically when both sides set their demands and then a third party assesses the situation and then they vote to come to an agreement. Anyway, apparently amidst all of this insanity with Disney laying off over 7,000 people this year already, closing the Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel and losing billions due to woke propaganda pushing, Disney needs to make money fast in order to save the company. Cameron Pasha spoke to Overlord DVD over on his YouTube channel and revealed that Disney is secretly in talks to sell off major brands and IPs that they no longer deem worthwhile to keep. And while you may think, how in the hell could Disney justify selling Star Wars, it's actually not the first time this has happened. Back in 2001, Disney bought the rights to the Fox Family Channel for $5.1 billion. One of the IPs within this deal was Power Rangers, which the owner of that IP is Haim Saban, who's an Egyptian billionaire. Anyway, back in 2001, Disney looked at the Power Rangers the same way they did Star Wars. But once they gained control of the IP, Disney's executives mismanaged the property and drove the IP into the dirt. This destruction of the Power Rangers franchise, which used to generate $5 billion in revenue annually, was ruined due to Mickey Mouse's control. Then on May 12, 2010, Saban, the original owner of Power Rangers, bought the rights to the franchise back from Disney. And while Disney bought the IP at its apex of worth, Saban was able to secure the rights back for $43 million.
Damn!
And to remind you, Saban was paid from this deal around $1.5 billion back in 2001 for selling Power Rangers. So buying it back for $43 million is an insane steal, but it proves how franchises' value can dip massively if they're mismanaged. So why am I talking about Power Rangers? Well, it turns out, according to Cameron Pasha's source, that Disney is looking to sell Star Wars to save the company. And the buyer is apparently not a company or group, but George Lucas himself. That's right, the guy who made Star Wars to begin with is apparently in talks to buy the rights to his life's work. Remember that Lucas did openly call Disney white slavers back when he sold the rights over a decade ago? Which he did apologize for, but George is right, come on now. Anyway, what we're seeing here is likely history repeating itself again just like it did with Saban and Power Rangers. Disney bought Star Wars in 2012 for $4 billion, and since then they've ruined the IP with failures like the sequel trilogy, and crap like Book of Boba Fett, and even managed to make people not care about Grogu and Mando somehow. Nowadays, while Star Wars is still obviously popular, Disney's sinking ship of woke identity politics and gender ideology nonsense has pushed Mickey Mouse and friends into a corner. And we very well could be heading towards a future where Disney sells Star Wars back to George Lucas. And it's clear that he was never okay with selling the franchise to begin with. When George sold it, he said, and I quote, "The first 3 movies had all kinds of issues. Disney looked at the stories and they said we want to make something for the fans. So I said all I want to do is tell the story of what happened. You know, it started here and it went there. It's all about generations and it's about, the issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers. It's a family soap opera. I mean, ultimately, we call it a space opera, but people don't realize it's actually a soap opera and it's all about family problems. It's not about spaceships." So they decided they didn't want to use those stories. They said they were going to go do their own thing. They weren't that keen to have me involved anyway. But at the time I said, if I get in there, I'm just going to cause trouble because they're not going to do what I want them to do. And I don't have the control to do that anymore, and all I would do is muck everything up. So I said, okay, I will go my way and I'll let them go their way. You have to put it behind you, and it's a very, very, very hard thing to do. But you have to just cut it off and say, okay, end of ball game, I got to move on. And everything in your body says don't, you can't, and these are my kids. All those Star Wars films, I loved them, I created them, I'm very intimately involved in them, and I sold them to the white slavers, end quote. God damn, that quote from George still hits like a frickin' truck even all these years later. I can only imagine how pissed he was when he saw Luke die and Han get thrown off a bridge like discarded cargo. Lucas really did see his life's work get every hole it had resized by Mickey Mouse and his gang of moron friends. And according to this insider who has accurately exposed everything related to Disney so far, they claim that Disney only has about $200 million in liquid assets right now. For those who don't know what that is, a liquid asset is something that a company can sell quickly in order to make money in the short term. So things like market shares, for example, but it's getting so bad for Disney, they might even need to sell some of their theme parks to survive. One analyst has also reported that they believe a future where Disney is bought outright could happen, with the buyer being Apple of all places.
So I'm just going to get straight to business. This is what Sparrow said. Bob Iger and Disney lawyers have begun discussing what the sale of Lucasfilm would look like, as they have identified a buyer, and they use a big B, right? A buyer who has expressed interest. So there's somebody who has, it's not theoretical. What they said to me is that because a couple of weeks back, Sparrow had heard that there was going to be some kind of special meeting between Disney Legal, Lucasfilm Legal, and Iger. And they didn't know what it was about. They thought maybe it's about the Acolyte, maybe it's about Leslie Headland, maybe it's about Kathleen Kennedy. They didn't know what it was about, right? Now they found out what it was about. And it's about this. It's about much bigger than that, apparently. So what they discovered is the meeting was about, Iger's like, I need you to draw up a plan for what selling Lucasfilm to this buyer would look like, right? And so it's not theoretical. We have a buyer, they've expressed interest. This is the buyer, and this is the economic situation. So come up to me with a proposal of how we could pull that off if we triggered it. I'm not saying it's triggered yet, but saying if we triggered it, this is what the meeting was. Show me how we could do it. Show me the structure of a sale. And then now they said, because they've now been privy to some of these conversations between these lawyers, they don't have access to all the information. I try to be as honest as possible. There's some things that are still confidential that they have not been able to find out. So they cannot identify the buyer definitely. But based on their interpretation, based on Sparrow's interpretation, based on these conversations that they have now become privy to within the legal team, the buyer could be a corporate entity. It could be a studio, maybe it could be a Universal or a Sony. It could be that. However, Sparrow said, and this is just their personal speculation, based on the conversations as they have now entered into, Sparrow saying, I'm getting the impression this isn't a corporate entity. The conversations are giving me the impression that the buyer is an individual, a person, one person, right? And that's when I nearly dropped the phone, because he said, the only person I can think of that would want and be able to and have a reason to buy Lucasfilm would be George Lucas himself.
And while that might seem crazy, the reality is that Disney is in such dire circumstances that nothing is off the table regarding its future. They pushed movies like The Little Mermaid so hard, and the movie was believed to be too big to fail. But it turns out that movie has also underperformed. From bounding into comics.com, The Little Mermaid's failure is being blamed on audiences being racist, instead of the film just not being what people wanted to see. As of the making of this video, Mermaid has made around $332 million with a budget of around $250 million, meaning the film needs to make at least $500 million in order to break even after marketing costs and everything else. But it's over 10 days since the movie released, and this imaginary audience that'll show up to push the movie further, it simply won't happen. Sites like The Hollywood Reporter and networks like CNN have all pushed the story that The Little Mermaid is going to be a massive fail for Disney, and it's not their faults, but you and I's fault instead, because of course it is. That film has been largely rejected by Asian audiences, with South Korea and China both ignoring the movie's release. One of the major reasons is because Asian fans are confused by Halle Bailey playing Ariel and that she looks nothing like the cartoon they remember. Basically, while woke morons have pushed the story that the movie is doing amazing here in America, the rest of the world has confirmed that they simply do not care about it. And it's clear that Disney's failure will continue to grow, as they just announced a remake of Hercules as well, which I can already bet is likely going to be terrible. And of course there's Hercules himself, who, wait a second, oh god no. And to prove that Disney's morals are completely out of whack, they also decided to shelf a movie about child trafficking after their merger with Fox. The film, called Sound of Freedom, follows the true story of Operation Underground Railroad CEO Tim Ballard, as he infiltrates the Colombian slave trade to save a little girl, and the film was originally going to come out in July this year. But for some unknown reason, Disney shelved the project and the movie never saw the light of day. Thankfully, the rights to the movie were gained by Angel Studios and the film will be released, but it's very on brand that Disney would be against a movie that exposes child traffickers while promoting hordes of woke content instead. I don't think I need to say it really, but this is clearly done due to an agenda. I refuse to believe any other theory about it. But as it stands, Disney is currently somehow in even worse shape than when I last reported on them. But this is unsurprisingly what happens when you chase after your ESG score while forgoing the core values that people loved about your company in the first place. Go woke, go broke doesn't even begin to cover the situation over in Mickey Mouse's kingdom. But if things keep going the way they are, there might not even be a kingdom left to save. Thank you for watching as always. Like the video to help the channel out and subscribe for more content like this one. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.